Good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Joe Davidge. I'm the Executive Director here at the Georgia Center for the Book. And on behalf of the Georgia Center for the Book, DeKalb County Public Library, and the DeKalb Library Foundation, welcome to another in our continuing series of virtual author events. Just a few notes before we begin tonight's event. If you would like to purchase a copy of this book, we encourage you to purchase it from Hatteras Books and More in Decatur, Georgia. We put a link in the chat, and you can click on that and order it directly from them. Hatteras is, of course, one of the nation's oldest feminist independent bookstores. And like so many independent bookstores during this pandemic, they have done so much to get us the books and supplies we need. So we encourage you, no matter where you are, to shop at your local independent bookstores, especially Black-owned independent bookstores and businesses. If you would like to ask a question after the formal presentation this evening, please do so by typing your question into the Q&A feature. You'll find the Q&A button at the top or the bottom of your screen, depending on your device. And if you click on that, you can type in the question and we'll answer it in turn. Also, we've enabled live transcriptions this evening for our hearing impaired guests. If you need to resize the font at the bottom or make any changes, locate the CC button at the top or the bottom of your screen and resize it, make it any color you wish to fit your needs. Also, once again, we would like to remind you that this is going to be a conversation. It's going to be very, very fun tonight, but do, as the chat rolls on, type in your questions so we can get those answered for you as well. So right now I'd like to go ahead and introduce our moderator for this evening. Jennifer Colatosti is an assistant professor of English at Georgia State University's Perimeter campus. She holds a master's degree from Ohio University and a doctorate from the University of Kansas in literature and creative writing. Her fiction and creative nonfiction have appeared in the MacGuffin, Midwestern Gothic, Southeast Review, Tinge Magazine, and Change 7 Magazine, among others. She, of course, is here tonight to chat with Heather Frese, whose fiction, essays, and poetry have appeared in Mission Quarterly Review, the Los Angeles Review, Front Porch, the Barely South Review, Switchback, and elsewhere, earning a notable mention in the Pushcart Prize Anthology and the Best American Essays. She received her master's degree from Ohio University and her master's in the fine arts from West Virginia University. Hail, West Virginia. Coastal Carolina is her longtime love and source of inspiration. Her writing is deeply influenced by the wild magic and history of the Outer Banks. She currently writes, edits, and wrangles 3 small children in Raleigh, North Carolina. Of course, this evening, The Baddest Girl on the Planet is her debut novel, and we encourage you to purchase a copy this evening. So right now, I would like to turn it over to Jen. Jen?
Thanks so much, Joe. Thank you, Georgia Center for the Book, for hosting us tonight. I'm really excited to talk with Heather about this book. So Heather and I are each other's writing soulmates. We met when we were both working on our master's degrees in literature and fiction writing at Ohio University. Heather was one of the first people to come up and talk to me. I was super shy. And we were waiting for our first fiction workshop of, I think, my very first day of grad school. And she complimented my outfit. And I was like, this is gonna be fine. And anyway, we just, that's not the only reason we're friends. That's just where it started. But we share work. We are pretty reliant on each other. And Heather's getting this book published felt like a win. I don't know that I would be more excited if it were my book. I love this book so deeply and so intensely, and I'm so happy that it's out in the world. Show you the cover again. I love the cover. But I also wanted to mention that it won the Lee Smith Novel Prize from Blair Publishers. So no small potatoes for my girl's debut. So from here, I'm going to turn it over to Heather to tell us a little bit and read a bit from the book.
Well, hi everyone, and thank you so much to the Georgia Center for the Book and to Jen for hosting this evening. It's just super exciting for me to see my writing soulmate. And like Jen said, we met in grad school, and that's been a good, I don't know what, 12, 13, 14 years now. It's been a minute. 15. And 15, something like that. I don't know. I'll just maybe blur that over. But we've stayed sort of critique and writing partners since then. We've working on stuff and kind of giving each other feedback and helping each other out. And I swear to heaven, this book would not be what it was without Jen. there's so many times when I was stuck or couldn't figure something out, and she would have the answer. And it's just, it's been so important to have that kind of relationship. So part of the overview for Baddest Girl on the Planet, and one of my favorite relationships in the book is the friendship. Evie Austin is my main character. She is a young girl born and raised on Hatteras Island, North Carolina, which is a small barrier island off the coast, very isolated. So Evie, when she's a young girl, ends up with a bad reputation for lots of reasons, and I'll maybe read about some of them here in a minute. But as she goes sort of throughout her childhood and adolescence, she finds herself trying to navigate sort of the waters of that reputation that she gets, and tries to sort of come to terms with it and redefine herself. And she does that sort of through the course of her relationships, romantic relationships and familial, and the relationship she has with her best friend, who is a little tourist from Ohio, who they meet when they're children, and they stay friends through their adult years. So that's kind of an overview. I consider it sort of a non-linear coming of age story. And the setting is super important, but I think I'll stop overviewing now and just read a few pages. I'm going to read just sort of from the beginning of the book. And this is chapter 1. It's called Kid Dynamite, and it takes place in 2013. My husband is not the first man to disappoint me. That honor goes to Mike Tyson, who I met the summer I was 9, the summer I left Hatteras Island to stay in Ohio for 2 weeks with my Ohio friend, Charlotte. Charlotte and I became friends while her family was camping on the Outer Banks, and I was allowed to take a sort of reverse vacation to the hills of Ohio. Charlotte's family lived in a pretty white 2-story house with blue shutters and dollops of woodworking around the front porch. I still think about that house and those green hills, about how every day seemed green and blue and gold. But maybe that's just how every day feels when you're a kid. Charlotte lived next door to Don King, and at that time he promoted Mike Tyson, along with a bunch of other guys, who all trained in tents in his backyard. Every day, Charlotte and I would gather up her friends Sarah M. and Sarah N. and make the boxers watch us turn cartwheels. They would stop their jump roping and shadow boxing to look at us and applaud, just like they really cared. When I got home, I bragged about Mike Tyson to all my friends. I was the toast of the 4th grade for an entire school year. Then Mike Tyson raped a girl. Real quick, I stopped saying he was my best friend, but kids don't forget things like befriending rapists. This did not help my social standing. Little girls who are best friends with rapists rarely remain popular, except for Charlotte, who got off the hook because everyone in her town thought Mike Tyson was a good guy. Still, Charlotte and I stayed close, partly because I didn't have many other friends. And then a few years later, just when I thought my Tyson-induced social pariah status had begun to blow over, he bit Evander Holyfield's ear off. I never mentioned Mike Tyson to anyone again. My husband is not the second man to disappoint me in my 23 years on this planet, not the 3rd or the 4th. So by the time his disappointments start to really roll in, you'd think I'd be braced for them. You'd think his metaphorical ear biting would not come as a complete and total shock. You'd think I'd be prepared for it when Stephen says, Evie, we need to sell the house, but I'm not. What do you mean sell the house? I say. It's morning and the light slices down through my window into my crazy, cozy little kitchen where I spend so much time boiling and baking and basting as a way to breathe. My house is not big and dollopy, and it does not have a front porch, and there's not a bit of gingerbread trim anywhere, but it's white and snug and bright and mine. I think of the morning after we moved in, when Stephen and I sat on the floor and laughed about owning 6 Splendors. Stephen leans against the counter like he hasn't a care in the world. Casual. He eats a bagel. He's wearing khaki pants, and I wonder if he's going into work at his father's store today. I was talking to Royce Burris at your office when I picked you up the other day, and he said we could get a good sum for the property, he says. I squeeze out a dish rag and wipe at the kitchen table, looking down and hoping that Stephen doesn't see my face color at Royce's name. I have a tiny crush on Royce. I take a second and listen to the loud commercial blasting from the living room where my son, Austin, is watching TV. But where would we live? I'm not saying it's a perfect plan, Stephen says. He crosses the kitchen and sits down in front of me at the table. But we could stay with your folks or mine until the cash clears and then build somewhere. I sit down. This sounds like an okay plan. This sounds thought out and maybe even mature. But I know Stephen's teeth are awfully close to my ear. Stephen links his fingers together and makes them into a steeple. We could build on the mainland. It'd be a hell of a lot cheaper. And there it is. He wants to leave the island. Chomp. Maybe if you got an actual job, we wouldn't be so strapped that we have to sell our home, I say. I lean forward on the table and my arms get sticky from the damp dish rag. Stephen's mouth tightens. It's an old argument and it goes like this. I say, get a job. He says, I'm staying home with Austin. I say, you're never home with him. And I know this because I drop him off at my parents' every day before I go to work while you fuck around on your jet ski. He says, I'm above working any jobs on this island. He doesn't say it in exactly those words, but that's what he means. And that's what he honestly, truly believes. But it's not below me to answer phones and make coffee and peddle beach houses to tourists every day because I'm just that low. He believes this too. I know it. Stephen crosses his arms and the sunlight glints off his watch. I have a job, he says. Part-time stock boy for your father doesn't count, I say. He works in the back where no one can see him and does it out of obligation to his father who basically gave us this house. Stephen shakes his head. God damn it, Evie, he says. Austin can hear you, I say. Can't hear a fucking thing over that goddamn TV. But Stephen lowers his voice all the same. I don't know why you let him watch it so much. I stand up. You're the stay-at-home father. Why don't you monitor him? I cross to the living room where Austin sits on his knees, entranced by Go Diego Go. My son is small and dark-haired, and I'm always a bit thankful that he looks like me. Come on, kid, I say, reaching down to pull him up from under his armpits. Time to go to grandma's. Austin has the charming habit of kicking the passenger seat on our daily rides up the island to drop him off at my parents' inn. I guess if I was strapped down in a car seat, I'd kick too, but it doesn't ease my annoyance. And I am strapped down, come to think of it, with my own seatbelt. How about you cut that out, buddy? I say. I glance in the rearview mirror, but Austin's looking away. I want to hear the hollaback song, he says, and I die a little inside. Every day he wants to hear Hollaback Girl. This was cute at first until he started singing, I ain't no harlot snap girl. And I had to correct him over and over so people don't think my kid knows about harlots, even though I know he has no idea what it means. He wants it every day. Every day we drive up the same road and listen to the same song. And I think of Charlotte saying you can't get lost on an island because pretty soon you'll drive off the end. And right now I want to drive off the end. But I pop in the cassette I've recorded from my dad's old stereo and think about how Stephen goes jogging every morning with his iPod. And then I make myself think about how I want Austin to grow up with a family, with a mom and a dad and a little white house that once held 6 blenders, a little white house that Stephen wants to sell. The morning is bright and sunny for February, and the Pamlico Sound spreads out in shades of blue and gray and green as Highway 12 passes close to the water. Austin kicks his seat in time to the music. I fumble for my sunglasses and sing along with Gwen Stefani. I would not be the first person in my marriage to have an affair. I think about this as Roy Spurris walks in the front door of the office, the little bell jangling his presence. Royce is easily in his 50s. His hair is brown and thin, and he has a small rounded gut. I find this endearing. I want to rub it like a Buddha belly. I debate whether it would be too forward to tell him so. Royce, I say, you are one sexy son of a bitch. Let me rub your belly. Royce looks startled, yet pleased. This is a notch up from our normal morning routine. Usually I tell him he's a beast, and he says I look nice in whatever I'm wearing. Royce crosses over to where I sit at the receptionist desk, puts down his briefcase, and shrugs off his jacket. He smells like the outdoors, and his hair is tousled. Royce props an arm on the tall desk. How's my sunshine today? I feel the familiar zing at his closeness, the stir in my belly and warmth in my face. I think about what it would be like to touch his arm. I'm mad at you, I say. I pout up my mouth in a way I hope is cute and sexy. Where are you now? He says. His eyes crinkle, and he doesn't look concerned. Why'd you go and tell my husband we should sell our house? Royce walks around the back of the desk to stand beside me, and I spin in my chair to look at him. I was just bullshitting with him, Royce says. He draws his eyebrows together. I find this endearing too. Does he seriously want to sell? I cross my arms. Anyone who got that house would just knock it down and build a monstrosity. And they would too, a pastel McMansion monstrosity. I'm sorry, Royce says. Didn't mean to put a bug in his ear. Royce reaches out his hand and I think he's going to touch my face and my heart pounds, but then he just smooths his hair and puts his hand back down. I try to breathe. Get yourself to your office, I say. The tourists need you. Royce gathers up his stuff and walks down the hallway. He turns, takes a couple backward steps and says, I'll make it up to you, Cupcake. and I just bet he will. I'll go ahead and stop there.
I love that opening. So I was trying to remember today, was that the first Evie like standalone? Okay.
That was the first one. Yeah, that was
Okay.
I thought I really wanted to write the story of her divorce. Like I knew like she was a character like that I had in previous things. And I knew from that work that she married Steven, and I knew I didn't like Steven, and I knew she wasn't going to stay with Steven. So I just wanted to write what I thought was just a quick little one-off of how Evie gets her divorce. And so that's kind of how it started, and it ended up setting off a chain reaction.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that happens in the book post-divorce is that Evie wins a trip to the Dominican Republic. This happens in chapter 4, which is one of my favorite chapter names. It's called Dominican Al's Once in a Lifetime Honeymoon Extravaganza, sponsored by Dominican Al's Fine Rum and Spirits. So Evie wins this trip and she's divorced. And so she takes her best friend, Charlotte. And Charlotte and Evie are at like very different points in their life right now. They, Evie's got a 5-year-old son she's raising, she's divorced, Charlotte's in grad school and like maybe getting a little pretentious because of that. So they go on this trip and they're doing this kind of like dance of like, we're connected, we're different, we're connected, we're different. And that kind of dance culminates in this scene where they're kind of like, they've been boozing because it's an all expense paid situation. And everybody else at this resort is basically couples on a honeymoon, and they get called on stage to play a version of the Newlywed Game. So Heather and I thought that it would be fun to do sort of a Newlywed Game to kind of structure and lead some of our conversation about the book. Otherwise, we're in danger of just like talking about our grad school memories or like what we want to do the next time we go on a vacation together. So Allie, can we see the Newlywed Game slides? Here it comes.
Hey.
Newlywed Game. And thank you to Allie for putting this together. And also to thank you to Allie and Joe. And on Friday, I was like, y'all, we have an idea. Okay.
Fun.
So Heather and I, so it's going to be a little bit different from the regular Newlywed Game, as you probably or likely know, depending on how old you are. If you're a lot younger than us, maybe you don't know this, but the Newlywed Game, newlyweds were supposed to guess each other's answers. Heather and I aren't going to do it that way. We're going to hold up our answers to the questions and see if they match, and then talk about them. So can we see the first question? Okay. So the first question is, and I need to move my panel over here. Okay. What are the top 3 adjectives to describe main character Evie Austin?
All right. Ready?
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. So I've got sharp, resilient, and feisty, and Heather's got feisty, sharp, and funny.
Bit of consensus there.
Bit of a consensus. Okay. So let's start maybe with the 2 we got in common. So
what do we have? Feisty and sharp? Yeah.
Yeah, feisty and sharp.
Yeah, when I started writing this chapter ended up being chapter 1, what I kind of really fell in love with, and I hadn't written Evie's voice before in first person, and as I was writing it, like she was just so feisty and so sharp, and she just like said whatever she thought. Mm-hmm. And it was just so much fun to write that I just had like a blast writing that, what I thought was just a little one-off thing. So that's kind of what I fell in love with. And then I think eventually, like a few months later, I had an idea for a story about this woman going on a really disastrous trip to Las Vegas. And it was Jen who said, he's like, wouldn't that be fun if that happened to Evie? I was like, yes, it would. And so I wrote that again in her voice. And again, like, it was just so much fun to imagine how she would deal with that situation, because I knew she was this like feisty, sharp character who wasn't gonna like take shit from anybody. And so to put her in these situations and let it like roll out, it was just one of the things I really like latched into and what kind of kept the project rolling. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would agree. I picked sharp and feisty for like a lot of it is her voice.
Yeah.
And you know, something I was thinking about today was how because I was thinking about like the Dominican Owl chapter and like kind of reviewing parts of it, and like how, you know, part of the rift there is that like, or not rift, but part of the tension is that so like Charlotte has had these education opportunities that Evie didn't get to, because Evie had started college and then became pregnant and then married Stephen, and then this book happens, or that's what's happened by the time we get her at the beginning of this book. And Evie's got this like troubled reputation, which I'm sure we'll get into talking about too. But until she really gains like a lot of self-confidence, I think it'd be like Charlotte's kind of like the educated or the smart one, right? But Evie's super sharp in ways that I think maybe she doesn't realize until later on. Like she's got a really keen sense of observation of other people and their characters, and she has these like really funny kind of like observations about characters or like descriptions of them. So she's really like quick-witted.
Yeah.
And then what was your third one that we didn't match on?
I had funny.
Funny.
I guess she's funny. It was just, she was just hilarious. Like, again, it was just like saying whatever she thought, and like just the way she kind of looked at the world and what made her laugh. And, and I think that's one of the things that Evie and Charlotte, as different as they are in different parts of the book, they have that in common, like that sort of a little bit quirky, sense of humor, no matter how different they are. That's one of the
that's a really good point. I would agree. So my third one was resilient.
Yeah,
and it took me a while to land on that word. When I have to like think of words without Heather's help, it's kind of difficult. Sometimes, a lot of times
I don't know.
I'll be like, what's the word I mean here? But I couldn't ask you because that would be cheating for tonight. But I was like, what's the word that means like no matter what? So because Evie has all these things that happen in her life, like the early, you know, like the having to drop out of college, to have a baby and get married, the divorce, you know, some other kind of setbacks. And she just keeps plugging. Like she finds ways to like make her life work and to not get stuck in, or not stuck isn't the right word, but not stagnate in a situation. You know, by the time we get to the end of the book, she's this like really kind of like self-assured woman, like working on, she's like moving into, I forget, in the end, has she gotten her real estate license or she's working on it?
I feel like she's gotten it at the end.
Okay.
The very end.
But I was like, am I misrepresenting? Am I thinking about something in the future that hasn't happened yet?
I think she's got a house. She's in her own house with Austin, and
she's in her own house with Austin.
She's kind of made peace with her community too. I think that was a big part of the tension in the book overall, was how she thinks her community views her and how they do view her, and that's part of what she's working throughout it. And at the end, like she feels a sense of sort of place in her community, which was kind of an important thing for her to come to terms with.
Yeah, I agree. All right, can we get the next question? Okay, so the next question is, what is the most compelling relationship in the book? And I'm going to tell you, like I had one answer and then I changed it. So.
Okay. There's a lot of relationships in the book. Like it's kind of like I said, kind of how she navigates things, and that's how I wanted to explore the different ones. So I went for the, I don't know, maybe it's my obvious one, but we'll see. Let's see what matches.
Okay. I didn't give you my question. But Evie and Charlotte was my first answer.
Yeah.
And I was already like by the point I like came back to this one, I knew I was going to cheat and put 2 answers for at least one more, so I didn't want to like cheat too many times. Do you want to talk about the Evie and Charlotte relationship, and then I'll talk about why I picked Evie and Mike Tyson?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I think we all actually maybe already kind of touched on it a bit. Like Evie and Charlotte meet when they're these little kids, and like from the start they have very different dynamics, different family dynamics. So at the point when they meet, Evie's a little girl and her family is in the midst of separation. Like her mom has gone off to Buffalo, or she hasn't left yet, but she's fooling around, and her parents are going to split up, and Charlotte's there on her nice little, cozy family vacation, and that's when they meet and become friends. So from the start they're very different people, but like I said, they have that bond that is, I think, it's just so interesting and compelling to me, and so unique to watch that grow through time, and how these people and they even live in different places, and so it takes work for them to maintain their friendship throughout the years. And so whatever like core bond that they have is sort of keeping them together, even as they grow and change and become very different people. And I just think it's so much fun to watch that evolve. And like much of the book is devoted to Evie's romantic relationships and how her reputation impacts that. But I think like one of the things I most enjoy writing about is friendship between women. Like it's just like I think it's just such an important facet in her life.
Yeah.
But Mike Tyson, though.
Mike Tyson. Yeah. So I also just wanted to add to what you were saying, and I think maybe we talked about this a little bit, like once the book was like physically published, or I can't remember if it's when you were working on final edits or when it was physically published, and I read it straight through for the first time in a long time. And I had this realization that I was like, I think the real love story is Evie and Charlotte.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Evie and Mike Tyson. So in the section that Heather read at the beginning, you all heard about how Evie meets Mike Tyson and this chance encounter when she's a kid, and that becomes this experience that kind of like kicks off or like some way shapes this reputation that she ends up getting. And also like this sense of like disappointment, right? Coming from men, especially in her life. So I was thinking today about how, and so just spoiler alert, if you haven't read the book, which you should, because it's amazing. So this is just a tiny spoiler, is that Mike Tyson comes back in 2 more stories, right? And so he's this constant, or not constant, but he's this reoccurring character in the book, even though he's not like, we don't see him speak or anything. But I was thinking about how Mike Tyson is this kind of conduit for Evie's relationship with herself and with her past, with her awareness of how other people see her, or how she thinks other people see her because of the way she had been like, Mike Tyson's my best friend, everybody. And that happens at such a formative age, she's like 9.
Yeah, there's 9. Yep.
Yeah. And so there's a point in the book where she has kind of an opportunity, or she comes close to an opportunity to confront Mike Tyson, and ultimately decides that she doesn't need to anymore. And so I was thinking about that, and how like, making peace with him is really part of like a big step for her with like making peace with herself and her place in her community. So that's why I picked that one.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was a big thing, was finding like he's almost like, he's not quite a foil, but he's definitely a mirror for how she's feeling about herself, and like she's coming to terms with that and that relationship, and being able to sort of let that go was definitely like part and parcel with her moving on and growing up a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Okay. Ooh, I struggled with this one. What is the most memorable setting detail? This is one. Okay, ready?
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Oh,
Okay. All right, talk about yours first.
There's this one scene that I really love. It's in, I forget which chapter it's in. I don't know, one of the later chapters in the book. But anyway, Evie's with her brother Nate and her son Austin. Nate and Austin are fishing, And
Oh, that's Women My Brother Have Loved.
is it Women? I can't remember. It's in one of those. Maybe it was Women.
It's
I think it was.
either
Yeah.
that one or maybe How to Stay, How to Go.
Yeah. I think it was Women My Brother Has Loved.
Okay.
But anyway, they're fishing, and it's, I don't know, it always sticks with me because I've always loved watching when they like cast their lines out to sea and it just looks like the air is moving, like you can't even see the fishing line, and so it's like a silver fish are in the air. And that one's a descriptive piece that's always stuck with me, that I was kind of proud of that one.
Yeah, that is a really, really good one. So I couldn't decide. And then I was like, why is this question so hard? And then I was like, you made up the question. You did it to yourself. But I wanted an in to talk about setting, because setting's super important in the book. So I picked two. I picked Highway 12 because it feels so central to the island of Hatteras, where Evie lives and where most of the stories take place. It's central to Evie's literal movements. And everything else that happens in her life kind of sprouts off of that highway, and her movements through her hometown and her community, right? And I think you mentioned that, well, is Highway 12 mentioned specifically in those open pages you read?
Yeah, when they're going up to drop off Austin.
Yeah, going up to drop off Austin. So there's this part at the end of that opening chapter.
It ends on Highway 12. Yeah.
It is Highway 12. And so I'm just gonna read y'all just real quick the end paragraph of that chapter. Heather writes, so this is Evie speaking. I drive up the road and it's a lovely end of the day, and I'm sure the sun is doing amazing sparkly things on the beautiful, beautiful water. It's a view people drive thousands of miles to see, but I can't see it anymore. All I can see is the road. I'm 23 years old, and for 40 more years, I'll drive up and down this road to work and back again. I can't quit. I'll never go back to school or climb Mount Everest or meet a Sherpa or throw a whirling dervish out of whirl. Those days are gone, and now it's just this day, these wheels, this road. So, kind of like Mike Tyson, like I feel like Evie's relationship to that highway changes, right? At this point, at the end of the first chapter, she's about to get divorced, right? And she's facing down that new life situation, right? And the new way that her life isn't going to go the way she thought it was going to. And so the road is this thing that is kind of like holding her in place. But then later it becomes like, I feel like kind of a more positive anchor for her life. So anyway, that's why I picked that. And then the dancing lights at the Bellagio. So when there are two chapters in the book where Evie goes to Las Vegas. And one of them is the one where she kind of sort of has an opportunity to maybe confront Mike Tyson. But I like the way Heather wrote from Evie's voice about the dancing. I put dancing Bellagio lights. I meant fountains, but you knew that, right?
I knew that.
The dancing Bellagio, like water fountains with the lights. It's just like really pretty writing. Okay, so I'm just going to read one sentence since I read you all a whole paragraph, but this is a point where Evie's kind of like coming to terms with not needing to confront Mike Tyson, accepting like herself and her place and her home and like wanting to be back home. So here's just one description. The water rushes up and hovers for a moment in midair, a tiny crystallized instant of anti-gravity perfection before it falls back down into the lake. I mean, damn, that's just a beautiful description, right?
Yay.
So Heather, do you want to talk a little bit about the role of setting in the book and like why Hatteras?
Yeah, definitely. I could talk for hours about this. I'll try and keep it a little bit short so we can do the rest of the questions. But yeah, that was so smart about the things you're saying about Highway 12. I just want to go back to that for a quick second because it's so interesting. Like she does in that first chapter, it ends on that road and she feels stuck on that road. And like, that's the one thing she has to look forward to. And it's just for anyone who's not familiar with Hatteras Island, like it's this little skinny barrier island way out in the ocean. You have to go over bridges to get to it. And there's one road to get on and off the island. You got to go up and down Highway 12. And it's not always there. Sometimes it washes away. In the storms, it floods. There's not always a way on and off of the island. And so also it like, another interesting part I was thinking of when you were talking was the bridge. Like once you go to the end of Highway 12 and you go over this bridge to get to the mainland, like to get off of the island, that becomes kind of
like a big swoopy bridge, right?
Big swoopy bridge. And for a lot of years, like they just replaced it recently. And for a lot of years, it was this old rickety, swoopy bridge that like, it just looked like it could fall down at any second. It was like 30 years past its due date to be replaced. And so Evie gets involved with the other moms on Hatteras Island who are like advocating to have the bridge replaced, and like she lobbies for it, and like it becomes part of her sort of becoming part of her community and like fitting in with those other moms who had been like the girls who tormented her when she was little. And so that in that way, I think the road kind of continues to like work through her life. Yeah. But anyway, Hatteras Island, just itself as a setting was just so important because it's just so interesting to me as a place to explore in fiction, because it's so isolated, it's so beautiful, and then there's so much drama already there, just like innate to the history of the place. There's like, you know, pirates and shipwrecks and World War II torpedoed ships and you know, daring sea rescues, and all that stuff is just stuff that Evie was like born on. And so it was like, it's interesting to me to imagine a character who had that as her upbringing and like what that would be like. And so then I also was inspired sort of by the metaphorical aspects of life on a barrier island where things don't stay put. Like I said, like the road washes out, a hurricane comes and like maybe several motels just get washed away and things don't stay the same. And as I was writing about like Evie's transformation and her changing character throughout her life, it just sort of connected with me on like a different level with this place that doesn't stay the same. Like the lighthouse, the Cape Hatteras lighthouse is like the tallest lighthouse in America. It's got the, you know, the stripies on it, but they moved it. Like it was put up like 100 so years ago, and at the time that it was erected, it was like, I don't know, yards and yards and yards away from the beach. And then the land eroded until the lighthouse was just about to like topple over into the water. And so like, I think of these lighthouses as these like, you know, these beacons of safety and stability, and they just like plucked it up and they moved it a mile inland so it wouldn't wash away. And that was just so interesting to me. Yeah. I ended up setting it, like using it as sort of a plot element in the story, and then also a metaphor, because like when that's happening, Evie's a little girl, and it's when her mom starts to have an affair with one of the men that come down to the island to move the lighthouse. That's who her mom kind of takes up with. So as as that's happening, the lighthouse is moving, her family is destabilized. So just like all kinds of ways to come at it that relates to the setting.
Yeah, cool. All right, can we get the next question? This is the last one before the lightning round.
All right. Okay,
so it's what is your favorite chapter?
Yay! I almost picked that one.
Okay, so mine is Women My Brother Has Loved, and then yours is part spell, part seance, part prayer.
Yeah, I picked that one because it was so much fun and so interesting to me to write little girl Evie and to try to keep the voice consistent. Because I'd written adult Evie before I wrote her as a child, and so it was this big challenge that I set up for myself to try and write that narrator as a child and like capture the voice right, so that reading it you would know that little girl grows up to be that woman.
Yeah.
And so it was tricky, and it felt really good to hopefully get it right. So that one holds a special place.
And it's also just a really poignant story in Evie's life, and this really like formative moment, like you were saying. It's when the lighthouse gets moved, it's when her family might be breaking, you know, it's the summer she meets Charlotte for the first time.
Yeah, all that stuff. And it's also this sort of like ironic distance in the story, because in the story, like Evie herself doesn't quite realize what's going on. Her mom tells them that you know, she has this important job to help the lighthouse movers. Yeah. And so that's what Evie believes. So like on some level she knows, but the reader knows that that's what's going on. Like they know her mom is being unfaithful, but Evie doesn't know that. And so that was also one of the challenges I was trying to get.
Yeah. And you do it like you did that all, you handled that all with the dramatic irony and everything too really well in that chapter. So I picked Women My Brother Has Loved for the main reason is because that chapter, Heather, is I think this perfect illustration of like some of what you do best and some of what I love best about your writing, like compelling storytelling with these characters who are like imperfectly human and like, you know, relatable. Like I hate to use likable, but you know, like we see their imperfections and we love them. You know, it's funny. It's got this inventive structure, like your whole book does, but it goes back and forth between. So it's the story of Evie's brother Nate and the women he has loved, and so it's kind of like Evie's learning about how you get to the right relationship by watching her brother, right? But then she's also part of her thought process is also there's the lobsters, right? So she's doing this. I love
little projection there onto the sex lives of lobsters.
Yeah, so there's like stuff about the sex lives of lobsters in it, right? And that becomes this like metaphor for like Evie kind of like thinking through how relationships work. And it's, Heather, you're so good at like doing research-based fiction without it feeling like artificial. And like, I know your dad was a geologist.
He was a geologist.
Right? And so there's like
always.
Yeah, there's like these threads in there of like how the natural world works, and that just gets woven into the chapters, into the stories in the book, in this really authentic way that doesn't feel forced, and I really love that.
Yay! I love that chapter too, and that was one of the last ones that I wrote. Like I thought the book was done, and I was going through and trying to figure out where any holes were and anything that that I needed to like flesh out and fill out a little bit more. And I ended up thinking that Evie and Nate, because when they were little, they had this sort of distant seeming relationship, and then I wrote them when they were grown up and they were sort of friends. But I kind of wanted to explore that a little bit more, her relationship with her brother, because he does become such an important person of support in her life, and they do become like really good friends. And that's also like in the end when she has to decide if she's going to leave, that's one of the people that she's going to have to decide, is she going to stay or go. So I wanted to sort of flesh that out a little bit, and also exactly like you said, have her sort of tracking Nate's relationships and putting it together for herself for how you know, how does a real good relationship work? Like let's sort of watch and see.
And she is also, I was just thinking as you were talking about like the way their relationship changed, like her observing those relationships through him is also like her learning to see her like big brother, who was like kind of a tormentor, you know, as big brothers sometimes are, like learning to see him as like a human. And those and learning to have like real compassion for him, you know, as
vulnerabilities. And that's an important point in their relationship.
All right, let's do the lightning round, and then I think we'll be probably after that ready for Q&A. Okay, so here's the deal with the lightning round. We made a list of some of our favorite things to do together in our friendship and writing soulmate ship. So our lightning round questions are: which of the characters would you want to do these activities with in real life? All right, first one.
All right, ready?
Yep. Drink Long Island iced teas followed by going out dancing.
I did a pack, because I felt like you needed a pack of girls for that.
I thought about putting Charlotte and Jenny in too, but then I used like a couple. Yes, you do need a pack for that.
You gotta have a pack of girls for that. That would definitely, You got to drink Long Island's with Evie.
Yeah.
So
And
funny.
Evie's like, and Evie would be the fun times ringleader for sure.
For sure.
She'd like order the first round. She'd be like, let's request this song or put this song on the jukebox. She would get it started. Exactly.
She would like stake out the spot right out front to shake it.
Yeah, she would. All right, go clothes shopping.
All right, I did a little this is
Troya. I thought about her for this
minor character. Yeah, very minor in this book, but she's got good style. So I kind of pulled from my imagination for that one. That was maybe cheating. But Charlotte also.
Yeah. So Troya is Charlotte's older cousin, and she has a bigger role in an as yet unpublished novel that Heather's written.
It's deep in revision now.
Yeah.
It's in there a bit more, but she pops into this one.
Yeah, she does. And so I was thinking her too. I was also thinking Charlotte, because she'd be like, I feel like Charlotte would be like gently honest and be like, I love you, and that is not the shirt for you.
Exactly.
Right. Brainstorm ideas for creative projects. Oh, where is my answer for that? I lost it. Okay.
You can just say it out loud. I'll put mine.
Okay. Out. All right. Mine was Charlotte.
Should be a good brainstormer.
But yeah, Aunt Faye too, because Aunt Faye paints.
Aunt Faye's she's a bit of a bohemian, a bit of a free spirit. Aunt Faye. So I don't think we've talked about Aunt Faye. Aunt Faye in the book was Evie's aunt, her dad's sister, and she's super important to Evie. As a child, she takes care of them when they're in that that transitional period when her mom leaves, and so Evie and Aunt Faye always kind of they're kind of soulmates. Aunt Faye gets her.
Yeah.
And then maybe it's a spoiler alert, but she dies. She's very bad, and you have to have a chapter about it.
Yeah. That's also, I mean, they're all my favorite chapters, but that's another one that I really love for like the structure.
Oh yeah, that was the coffee table book.
The coffee table book one.
Etiquette, yeah.
Yeah. All right, next lightning round. Drink wine, eat chocolate, and gossip about nemeses. I've got Aunt Faye and Evie. So we were switched because mine was Charlotte for that one, and yeah.
Yeah, Aunt Faye would be a real good one to gossip about nemeses.
Yeah. Yeah, Aunt Faye would like not hold back on her. If you want to judge somebody, Aunt Faye's not going to judge you for that, and she's going to add her own judgments as well.
Yeah. And talk smack right along with you.
Yeah.
All right.
Chill all day on a beach and or go for a walk through a pretty neighborhood and talk about life.
All right.
Oh, Austin. I got Nate.
I almost did a trifecta. I almost did Austin, Nate, and Daniel.
Yeah.
Be a good
I thought about doing Daniel too. So Daniel is Evie's love interest who comes in later in the narrative. Mm-hmm. But I partly did that, and I thought about him too, because he's such like, when he and Evie especially start their courtship, he's like a really like focused listener. But I have always had he's a literary character, and I understand this, but I have always had a crush on Nate. So don't tell my husband. Yeah. Or do, he wouldn't care.
You realize it's imaginary, right?
I do realize it's imaginary. Okay, so last lightning round question. Get dressed up for a theme party or shuffle. And for people who didn't go to Ohio University, a shuffle is what other people call a pub crawl.
Okay.
All right.
I went outside the box for this one.
Oh, I didn't even think about the Hatteras Bridge moms. That is a good call.
Yeah, you gotta, Evie and Charlotte, that's where I went. That's like absolutely where I went to. I'm like, because they would have so much fun. Like, wouldn't it be so much fun to do that with them?
Yeah. Oh, Simone. Yeah. Simone says, oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just thought Evie and Charlotte, I was thinking they'd be fun to travel in a pack, but you're right. It's the Hatteras Bridge moms. Like, they would They would cut loose.
They would cut loose, and it's like again, it was like I gotta have a pack of them, and it would be sort of a bonding experience for them. Like
Yeah.
the Hatteras Bridge moms would get a big kick out of that.
Yeah.
I think they were pretty much drinking during the bridge ceremony, and like they would hold their own.
They would. They'd be like, it's Mom's Weekend at OU. Let's take a little trip up to Appalachia.
Oh my God, I should write about Mom's Weekend. Wouldn't that be hilarious? What would Evie do at Mom's Weekend? Jeez.
That would be hilarious. Mom's Weekend, for people who didn't go to OU, is the weekend that moms come to town, and it is wild.
They visit and they go a little wild.
There's always rumors, some confirmed, some not, of them picking up undergrad gentlemen.
Yep. You can see them out and about.
Yeah. All right, so let's take we've got some time for Q&A if anybody wants to ask questions. So there is a Q&A function on Zoom. So if you've got questions for Heather, you can type them in there or in the chat. Trying to figure out all these things. Yeah. Looking them all.
Well, for me, for some strange reason, since we're in presenter mode, I can't type questions into the Q&A feature. I think it's just something with Zoom. But of course, I mentioned that you did go to West Virginia University, and I also went to West Virginia University. So what was it like getting your master's in the fine art of writing there? How did that program work?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I did my master's in, it was English and emphasis in creative writing at OU with Jen. And then, I went to do my MFA in Morgantown. And at that time, it was like the biggest place I'd ever lived. Like it was, that was a big city for me. It was a big school. But it was great. And when I got there, like I just loved my experience at Ohio so much. Like I was like, I don't know, I was sort of grumpy that I was anywhere else. And like, I was like, nothing's ever going to measure up to like meeting Jen and my friends at Ohio. But I made really good friends there and a really good cohort and people who I'm still like in touch with today who have a really big impact on just like with my friends. And then also like we still share work and stuff. So yeah, it was great. It was a good experience, and it was, up in the mountains and big city for me, and big football and burning couches and all that.
I was gonna ask, I was like, not rival Mom's Weekend, but football Saturdays or
football Saturdays. Yeah, that was it.
Absolutely. I never participated in, but there were many couch burnings.
There were same. I never participated in. My little apartment was like a ways off, up a bunch of hills and out, so I wasn't right in the thick of it. But it was good.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the last time I was at a football game in college there. And I went with a friend and up on Law Center Hill, and because that's where the band set up and everything. But after everything was done, we went back up there to watch because we won by some unbelievable margin, and it was the last time we were playing this football team.
Oh no!
He's frozen for me.
Yeah, Joe, you're frozen.
Oh, you're frozen.
Okay, Joe's frozen, but I see that Allie has typed a question in the chat.
Oh, good.
She says, so you're working on multiple projects in the same world, it seems. What's that process like? I always love books like that.
Yay. Yeah, I am. Like the project that I'm sort of deep in revision now was an earlier project, and it's from Charlotte's point of view, and it's kind of a grief novel and a novel of her. It's not really, I wouldn't necessarily label it a coming of age, but like it's her sort of grief story. And so like that's where I started writing these characters, and I put that away for a long while because I needed to I needed to put it away and get distance from it so that it could be not like, I don't know, I needed to separate myself from the process of writing it to like now looking at it just as, you know, a piece of fiction and how to make it the best it can be. But yeah, that's where I kind of looked at that world and through Charlotte's point of view and her interpretations of things. And then, like I said, like I really just wanted to take a little peek into Evie and figure out how she decided to get her divorce. And like, so imagining things from Charlotte's point of view and imagining things from Evie's point of view are very, very different and very, I don't know, it was just kind of fascinating. And I just felt like I wasn't done with it. And I don't know that I'm quite done with it yet. Like, I feel like there's some people in the narrative that I really want to explore a little bit more. Like I want to explore Evie's mom, who's super interesting and who I don't get to touch on much in either of the previous works. And then Aunt Faye and like some interesting relationships between all of them. So yeah, it's just something about that, the world I've really kind of latched into. And I just like, I'm just not quite done with it. So hopefully I can get the revision kind of like dug into and shaped up and to where it needs to be so it can come out in the world too.
Yeah. And I feel like I want to like talk about that more, but then I have privileged information because I'm reading the revision. So
Yeah.
We'll hold that for the next
Nobody else will know.
All right, we've got a couple minutes left. Does anybody else have questions? Oh, okay. So, or Heather, if you want to read, we've got a couple minutes if you want to do a second reading excerpt.
I can do that. So I'm going to read, and cut me off if I go too long, but I was going to read for a little bit from Women My Brother Has Loved. I've never read from this chapter, I don't think.
Oh, yay!
One that Jen made. So this was so these are the women that Evie's brother Nate has been involved with. Monet Fairchild. She's the third woman my brother loved. Monet sported a tattoo of an angelfish on the left side of her neck. She was from Boulder, Colorado, but she said she'd always dreamt of the ocean, so she moved to Avon to work at Seaside Spa, where she created delicate swirls of custom nail color and taught hot yoga. This was just after Stephen left, and at first I blamed my dislike of her on that fact, thinking it was just my general state of gloom mixed with rage, because Nate pulsated with happiness. He and Monet flounced about the island, arms entwined around waists, eyes gooey and gazing. My dad, who I could usually count on for a solid dose of snark involving Nate's girlfriends, doted on Monet like she was a baby pygmy goat. He even took a hot yoga class. My mom refused to do the dishes because she'd ruined her tie-dyed manicure, and Austin, who had just turned 5 at the time, began a sudden obsession with angelfish. It was Austin in the end who undid things. He came a touch unmoored when Stephen moved to Raleigh, throwing screaming, red-faced tantrums each time I left for work, flailing bonelessly on whatever floor he happened to be near at the moment. He'd kick, he'd bite, he'd throw his Monsters Inc. folding chair across the room like a hopped-up movie star trashing a hotel. He refused to eat, smearing SpaghettiOs on the carpet or spitting mushy, mangled mouthfuls of peanut butter and jelly on the table. It was during one of these pleasant Sunday lunches that Austin began to unravel Nate and Monet. Monet, who was, of course, vegan, reached for the platter of tofu fries my dad had made just for her. The sunlight glinted off her highlights, and she stretched across the table to pat my dad's arm. "Thank you so much for preparing lunch, Mr. Austin," she said. My dad, no lie, blushed. "Anytime, my dear," he said. Nate rubbed a small circle at the base of Monet's spine with one hand and ate tofu fries with the other. "These aren't half bad," he said. I wanted to make a joke about them being all bad, but Nate's relaxed posture and easy grin stopped me. "Can I try one, Uncle Nate?" Austin asked. He'd been on company behavior for a while now because Monet was there, quietly mincing his hot dog into tiny bites and pushing the pink scraps around his plate. He hadn't thrown a fit in 3 hours, and I was getting nervous. Nate began to hand a fry to Austin, but Monet whispered, "I don't think he'll like it." Nate put the fry back on his plate. "These really aren't your style, buddy," he said. "Let him try it," I said. Anything Austin expressed interest in eating those days was fine with me. Nate raised an eyebrow. "Do you think that's a good idea?" It's not like he wants to eat an entire pan of brownies. "Can I have a brownie?" Austin asked. "No," I said. Monet swallowed a bite of salad and said, "Of course, if you think it's okay. It's just that Nate mentioned Austin's been a bit..." Monet lowered her voice. "Delicate lately." I didn't want something new to, again with a lowering, upset him. He doesn't have consumption, I said. I couldn't help it. Austin had been acting like a shit, but he certainly wasn't delicate. I handed him a tofu fry. Nate moved his hand to Monet's upper back. Monet just wants us to keep having a nice lunch, he said. Austin, his face a cherubic sheen of placidity, nodded and finished his tofu fry. It's nice, he said. It's a nice lunch. He smiled up at Monet. I'm glad you like it, Monet said. We finished the meal without further incident, but when Nate and Monet said they had to go if they wanted to catch the last matinee, Austin started his meltdown. Don't go, he whined, tugging on Monet's hand with enough force that her shoulder dipped. Nate looked at me with a conspiratorial grin, as if we were bonding over how very much Austin loved Monet. Monet knelt down. Sweetie, we're going to go see a movie. Do you like movies? Austin shook his head. No, 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 no. Don't go. His volume hiked a decibel. Uncle Nate and I will see you again soon, she said. She adjusted her purse on her shoulder and stood up, glancing at Nate. Ready? She asked him. Austin buckled his legs beneath himself, his knees hitting the floor with a dull thud. He screamed, a throaty wail of anguish, and I moved to scrape him off the floor. Austin thrashed and flailed. The kid only weighed 33 pounds, but it felt like dragging a sodden, lifeless body out of the surf. He dug his heels into the carpet, leaving roughed up streaks as I pulled him away from the door. Sorry, I yelled over his hollering. Have fun. Austin regained his bones and stood straight up, his hands in small, tight fists at his side, red splotches on his cheeks. Maybe he did have consumption. You can go, but don't take Uncle Nate, he said. Nate tousled Austin's hair and Austin collapsed to the floor again, yelling and banging. I'll come see you tonight, Nate said. It's nothing to freak out over, man. You won't either come back, Austin shouted into the carpet. You won't either. I splintered then, and Nate looked at me and I could tell he did too. He sat on the floor and pulled Austin into his lap. Don't you even think about biting me, he said. Monet bent over and touched Nate's shoulder. We're going to be late, hon. Austin stopped pounding the floor and his screaming changed to sobs, fat tears sliding down his face, snot smearing Nate's cargo shorts. Nate rocked him back and forth, back and forth. They didn't break up right then, of course. It took Monet a few months to get over Nate's pheromones, and it took Nate a few months to realize that one of the reasons Monet taught hot yoga was to have the sweaty, slippery attention of a crowded room 3 times a week. Monet started having dreams about Tuscany. She got a tattoo of a sunflower on her right calf and broke up with Nate and left not long after that. And I will stop there.
Nate's totally crush worthy.
He is such a good guy. Good old Nate.
Okay.
Well, Jen, Heather, thank you so much for this evening's extravaganza, although it was not sponsored by Dominican Owls Rum and Fine Spirits. If you all are so inclined, Karis Books and More does have copies of The Baddest Girl on the Planet, and we encourage you to purchase it from them this evening or any independent bookstore near you. Ladies, this was absolutely fun, especially with the newlywed game addition to it. And, thank you, Allie, for putting those together for us tonight. But thank you all so much. And thank you at home for joining us once again and allowing us into your homes to share this evening with you. We hope to see you all again very, very soon. Have a safe and wonderful evening. And being near the weekend, enjoy football or a shuffle. Thank you all again.
Thank you so much.